I've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of people, and I've never interviewed this guy, and he's one of my favorites. I love the fact that he's discovered one of the keys to the kingdom, which is humor. And looking at the light side of things, I always say, whenever something happens, try to find Jesus, try to find the jewel in it, and find the joke. And nobody does that better than Brad Stine. He's been referred to as God's comic. Brad, welcome. Thanks for joining me here. How you doing?
I can't tell you where I'd rather be, but I got to tell you, I've been brushing up on my Aramaic because I assume that's what we'd be doing this interview in, and I guess you're just going to go use English?
I do, but when you think about Aramaic, what do you think was, if you look at it from the perspective of the third commandment, what would you say would be a hidden message there in Aramaic? Any thoughts on that?
I am not allowed to tell you that.
Okay.
That was
all right.
something I was given during a prayer and fasting in sackcloth and ashes. So unfortunately, that's something that's just between me and the Lord now.
Totally respect that. I do that every Wednesday, and find that quite. I actually use Aramaic ashes, and it seems to work really well.
Well, that's
now, Brad.
In the big box.
Yeah. Hey, Brad. We're doing things at New Life. You know, we're always trying to help people, and there's something that you have going for you. Two things that I really love. You really do have an amazing grip on reality, and you are based and founded in truth, but you're able to also help people to see the lighter side of things and laugh. And, you know, we use a lot of humor at New Life, and we've been so blessed to have people say, well, I went to your workshop and I laughed so much that I didn't have this this arthritic pain for like 3 days. How did you discover that humor really could do some things with people and for people that nothing else can?
Well, I don't know that I understood what I was doing initially. I just wanted to be a comedian, and I thought that would be interesting enough. It's hard to be a stand-up comic. I was in nightclubs performing. I was a Christian, so I didn't use curse words. I didn't use sexual references. Everything that is the status quo now for comedy, I just didn't do it because I had a specific nomenclature, specific parameters that I had because of my faith. But interestingly enough, I also found it more intriguing and interesting to perform clean because you got to be creative, and I believe creativity is funnier than crude. So when I started out, I was just trying to see if I could pull off being a comedian. Trust me, that's hard enough. But what happened was I started performing in churches in Southern California in the 90s. When it was not really as common as it is now. And when I first heard that they were doing comedy in churches, I'm like, I grew up in the church. I've never heard of such a thing. But, hey, I know I can do it for these people. I know who my people are. I know what I can get away with. I didn't have to clean up my act because it was already clean. But it was certainly a different environment of a venue.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, let's see what this is all about. Well, what was interesting to me, Steve, was that because I was working for my own people, I would bring laughter to them. That was something I had done a long time and certainly something I knew how to do. But there would be moments when I'd try to inspire them. It just kind of came out extemporaneously. And when I came up with these sort of inspiring moments or something to encourage or whatever, the audience would kind of quiet down and there would be this sort of intense connection that I would have. And there was a point about 25 years ago where I told my wife, I said, I don't know what this means, but I think I'm supposed to be in ministry. And it was like, she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, I don't know how to explain this. I've been in some of the top comedy clubs in the country. I've gotten big laughs, standing ovations, everything you would want. And it's wonderful. But when I tell my people something that I feel needs to be said, the only way I can describe it is I feel like this is who I am. And so I realized that I was being called for a much larger purpose. If you're familiar with my comedy, which you said you are, and I'm sure you have to say that, being as you got me on, and you're paying me the big bucks. Yeah, you had to give the illusion you've heard some of my material. But, you know, my comedy has always been unique amongst the Christian comics, is that it's never been safe. It's been dangerous. Well, you know what I've come to discover is Christianity is dangerous. And I mean, true Christianity. And I don't mean that by trying to be provocative. I don't mean that by trying to get away with something or be, you know, I don't know, utilize your status as someone who's using words to be inappropriate. I don't mean it like that, or see what I can get away with. I never wanted to get away with anything. But I knew that I was called to say something more than just comedy. Now, it's a long story, and we don't have time for it today, but let me just sum it up by saying, God brought me to a place where he said, I own your funny. It's mine. I gave it to you. And that is not your gift. Your gift is not humor. Now, I thought, what do you mean? I'm a comedian. That's my gift. And God said, no, your gift is communication. The flavor is comedy. That's how I'm going to deliver this. But in the future in America, my people are going to have to get used to hearing my voice from some unorthodox places. And this is going to be one of them, because comedy has been given a little bit more of a pass traditionally in culture as far as what it could get away with. We were the last vestige of not having to be politically correct, so to speak, but to really challenge the freedom of conscience and thought. Now, even that's coming to a head. But that's really, you know, I apologize if that's a longer answer than a simple question, but it's because the answer was longer. There was more.
Yeah, you had a long answer.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What would you say is one of the greatest moments of comedy where it all kind of came together for you? Is that even I don't even know if that's a good question or not. If someone asked me that, I could tell them about a preaching experience I had. Is there one moment that stands out above a lot of other moments?
I mean, you know, like you said, there, you know, if you're a professional speaker, you have so many over the years. But I guess if I had to try to figure out what might be the most profound, even though at the moment maybe I didn't realize it, it was speaking the first time I ever spoke at Promise Keepers, because I became their comic. Well, the first time they brought me in was in 2003. I was in Texas, and they had never used comedians. They didn't think it would really fit or it was appropriate, and they felt like they wanted to mix things up, and they were looking for a comic that they thought would fit the vibe of masculinity, and it was just hard. And suddenly they came across one of my tapes, and they're like, I think we found it. Anyways, they brought me on stage. Well, prior to going on stage, I'm in Lubbock, Texas, so all these guys are out there in their cowboy hats and their buckles, and these are men's men. This is Texas. And I remember thinking to God and praying to God, said, I don't feel really worthy to be here, because some of the speakers that they've had and have are, you know, top theologians and philosophers, and, you know, they have all these degrees. And I'm like, God, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I know how to do comedy, but what's the point? And it struck me. It's like, you know, you look out, you see all these men with their cowboy hats and their buckles and their probably guns, and there's somebody out there whose wife has left him. There's somebody out there who's on drugs. There's somebody out there who's an alcoholic. There's somebody out there who's gay, and he doesn't know how he's supposed to approach his faith with that. And I
might be a couple of guys, just taking a guess here, might be a couple that are using pornography quite a bit.
Well, that's a stretch. Yeah, try to. I'm sure you really have to dig to find a guy that struggled with that. A guy that struggled with that. Yeah, that is definitely a standard that every guy has dealt with in some respect. But ultimately, what I realized was I was a layman. I said, and I feel like that's why you're here. You're just one of them. You know, sometimes we look at the speakers on a platform, and of course the platform's created to make you appear bigger than life. You got a booming voice with a microphone. You got all the big lights. You're on the stage. You're really given a godlike status. And I wanted to even it up and just say, guys, I'm just like you. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure this journey out. I'm seeking God, but it's not easy. So I'm going to lift you up. I'm just going to lift you up, and we're going to talk just like men. I'm not going to dumb this down. I'm not going to feminize this. I'm
Right.
going to act like I'm talking to children. I'm talking to men about our
There you go.
struggles. And anyways, when I finished that show, and the men stood up, and it was this gigantic, thunderous applause and standing ovation, and I walked off stage, and the stage manager, the one who Harold Velasquez who was running it, was staring at me as I walked down stage. His mouth was wide open, and he looked at me and he goes, "What have you done to these guys?" And I remember kind of, oh no, what have I done? Did I make a mistake? Did I say the wrong thing? Because I'm very, very respectful of pastors' platforms and their stages, because I don't want to mess it up, and I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I was for a second concerned, did I overstep the line? Did I do something?
Yeah.
But I guess what he was saying was there's an energy, there's something about the response that we haven't seen before. And anyways, from that point on, I became their comedian. And it was from there that I really had a number of wonderful men, Art Remington and different folks that were part of that experience that would encourage me and say, "Brad, you were called for something else. There's something else that you're here for." And I think it was, now I ran from it, so that's another story. But it was the moment when I realized my purpose of why I'm here. What's my legacy? What is God's reason? He made me funny and made me for this season in America. And now, as we're getting even more and more into uncharted waters, especially now with this coronavirus and the understanding that rights can be taken. I'm a big, as you would know, religious liberties man, or big First Amendment man, a man of conscience. I just worked at Idaho we're opening the state Idaho convention, and they didn't have a permit to be on the Capitol steps, but I was there because as a Christian, I believe I'm supposed to be the best of citizens. I have to honor God and his call in my life. And my particular brand of comedy is dangerous, but hopefully has a depth and an intelligence to it, and a provocative spirit that drives believers to get all in. This Christianity thing isn't supposed to be easy. It's a discipline, and it costs you something, and it's worth it. But American Christians have had it too easy, too long, and now we're seeing what it looks like when there's something at stake.
No kidding. Well, other than the minor challenge that our civil liberties might be taken away from us as a result of the coronavirus, what are some of your other observations as you've seen people deal with this, make adjustments, go through tough times? What are you thinking about? What are you saying about it?
Well, I have Christianity comes with a lot of baggage, because God is always asking us to do stuff that is ridiculous. He's saying, "Love your enemy," and I'm like going, "Are you sure that's what you meant? You didn't mean shoot your enemy or flee your enemy or cage your enemy. You sure it was love? Pray for those despitefully use you. You mean not attack those despitefully." I want you to be consistent. Romans, you need to respect those in charge in the government and who God puts into place. And all of that is true, but there's nuance. There's so much nuance to cultures and to civilization and to Christianity. And I'm a firm believer that God expects us to adapt and be very present to your specific territory that you were specifically born in. In other words, if you and I were in North Korea right now, this conversation would be different. Number one, we'd be in a bunker, hidden somewhere. This would be very private, and we would be looking over our shoulders every second, wondering when the secret police were going to come in and shoot us. If we were in China, it would be a different story. If we were in Myanmar, India, if we were in Nigeria, where genocide is taking place, different story. But we're in America. And so even though, yes, we are to respect the government, absolutely. But here's what people forget, and Christians forget. The government in the United States of America, since we're a constitutional republic, is the people. We have created a creedal constitutional government that states we will elect leaders to represent our voice, but we do not and are not beholden to someone to step on our liberties that have been established in the Constitution without our consent. That's the deal.
Right.
And so we have a right as citizens to peacefully say and redress our government, this isn't right. Hey, when this thing first hit, all of us were going, what's going on? Because this was kind of unprecedented. We don't know what's going on. They're telling us we got this thing that nobody's ever seen before. Maybe it was manufactured in a lab. This thing could take off. And, so now we're picturing people dropping dead in the streets. People, the pilots are dying and crashing their plane. I mean, this is the Black Plague, steroids. So I can understand if you're a leader of your country going, I'm not sure how to cope with this, but let's shut everything down so we can try to get a handle on this. Okay, I could see a week. Yeah. I could see 2 weeks saying, let's get a handle, let's let the dust settle. What are we dealing with? How do we cope with something like this? Well, now we're, what are we in this, 35, 40, 60 days? We have a lot of information now. We got a lot more information than we had before. We now know what age group is most affected. We know who are most vulnerable. Which, by the way, as Christians and citizens to the world, we wanted to help those people. We want to defend those people. How do we keep them in a place where they're not going to get sick? How do we keep not bringing the sickness to them?
Yeah.
But when you decide that we're going to shut down everybody's business, we're going to shut down everybody's ability to travel, we're going to destroy your ability to make your house payments, you're not going to be able to get food, we're going to destroy your infrastructure and collapse your economy. Something is off. Something's not right. And yeah, we saw it in Italy and we saw that. Meanwhile, Sweden never shut down. They're doing great. I think 9 states in the United States didn't shut down. They're doing great. I think it was North Dakota or South Dakota governor who didn't shut down. They gave a parade to this woman. I was like, oh, thank you. And I was just in Idaho, as I said, performing on the steps. They asked me to come in, and they actually had let people line up and sign an edict to their governor saying, forget this phase 1 opening. We have less than 2 million people in this state. We're opening. We are going to go back to this. We will be careful. We don't want to just rush in and act like there's no sweat here, where if we need to stay 5 feet away from somebody for a while, so be it. But to destroy everything that makes us free and logical, clearly is not the way you have to handle it. So I hope we learn from this. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we pray that we'll bounce back from this and we'll figure out a way to restart everything and people can get back into to their lifestyle. But we'll never be the same. Yeah. And it tells me from a Christian perspective what God is always, always trying to let us remind us. You don't control anything. Whatever you thought, the way things work and the status quo, nothing works like that. And it can all stop on a dime. So keep in mind that the answer to the prayer, when this is over, when we get back to business, when we get back to our lives, keep in mind that the answer to the prayer should not be your peace. Be grateful when this is over. Be grateful that prayer is answered. But the peace will always come from the fact that Christ was walking through us in the darkness the whole time. If you don't get that now, that the answer to your prayer isn't the answer to your peace, that you got to have God and accept whatever circumstance comes your way. And again, by viewing our brothers and sisters around the world who, for the most part, are being persecuted and slaughtered, and what they've learned, and transfer that to this free country and apply it to that, then we're going to be in big trouble. But I really believe, and I've seen this in the last year or so, that God is weeding out the churchgoers and looking for true Christians who are ready to sacrifice anything and everything for the faith. I think that's what's happening to America, Arterburn.
Yeah. Well, Brad, you have an amazing ability. It's one of the reasons you are, or were the Promise Keeper's choice. You were their comedian. You were their communicator. But you do have a way of connecting with a man's heart. And so, final question for you. What do you say to a man who really struggles, feeling adequate, competent, feels kind of like a second class, hasn't really been able to do much with his life. What do you say to that person to encourage them in one of the most discouraging times ever?
You mean specifically because of this coronavirus, or just in general?
No, it's like, here comes the virus. On top of, before the virus, they were already struggling with kind of feeling like inadequate. Maybe they didn't have a great dad or whatever. And so they're really, really struggling to feel competent and capable as a man in this world. What do you say to that guy?
Well, I would say within this, number one, every man has struggled with that. So the first thing you need to know is, do not think that your feelings of inadequacy as a father, as a husband, as a Christian, as a man, as a leader, as a warrior, as everything that we flippantly talk about at a men's event that you feel completely disconnected from means that you are less than. Let me make it very clear to you, brother. Every single man struggles with this because we so desperately want to be men of honor. We want our wives to respect and listen, our kids, and we want to make right decisions. And we're not going to every time because we're sinners. So keep this in mind. The next time you go somewhere or hear a sermon or something where you feel less than, or that in some way you feel your dignity is being besmirched, keep this in mind. God died for you because you were worth it. He made us. We screwed up. And he didn't have to keep us. He said, no, this is where I end this story. I'm not making a new group of people. I'm going to keep the creation I made. I'm going to sacrifice myself for you. I am the ultimate father, and I love you because you are made in my image. I love you because you are my son. I will fight for you. I will give you all the information you need in my word. Pray to me, come to me. You're going to fall. I'm still going to pick you up. I'm going to dust you off. I'm going to tell you get back in the game, because that's how men handle things. Right. We're not like the women that hold you tight and say, let me protect you from everything. And that's a wonderful thing, the mom hug. Mom hug is fine. But there's the time when the father hug says, I love you, and I'm fighting with you, son, but you got to get back in the game. Well, God, the Father is saying that, and let me be just vicarious moment to you to say this, if you're watching. You're approved by God. You got to keep doing the work. You got to keep trying. But as long as you seek God and seek holiness, you're okay. You're exactly where you are. You're on a journey, and you're never going to get there on this earth. So just keep fighting. Know you're not alone, and know that nothing you experience is unique. We're all in the same boat. That's why we need each other. We are designed for community, especially men. Amen. Who like to isolate. We need each other.
Well, Brad, thank you so much. And I know, because I've heard you off the stage too, you're a deep thinker. You have great perspective on life. I appreciate you sharing with us here today. And tell everybody, if they want to get in touch with you, how they could do that.
Yeah, just go to bradstine.com. And you can bring me in. I have, comedy that looks at God and country and mocks political correctness. I do ministry work. I work at men's events. I have a show called The God Experience that proves God exists. Everything that God has called me to do is through the performance arts as a means to get the gospel out and the values that God has given me out. So just go to bradstine.com and you can contact me. And if your state looking to open up, give me a call, because apparently that's a new world for me. So, but hey, it's been an honor to be with you, Steve. I've heard your ministry over the years, and it's a great work that you're doing. It's crucial that the character and the deep mental and emotional element of humans are reached and healed. And for many years, Christians were afraid of that. And boy, do we need guys like you to get to those broken inner parts that some, especially men, are afraid to look at. So God bless you, brother. We're on the same boat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad. And we'll see you down the road. I hope our paths will cross very soon. And thank all of you for dropping by here. I hope something that Brad has said has been encouraging to you. Behind every person that I've ever met who was really funny was actually a very brilliant person, if they were a clean comedian. A lot of non-clean comedians, quite frankly, aren't too bright. But it takes a very bright mind to make laughter come from stuff that isn't just shockingly vulgar. Brad's one of those guys, and I hope you'll, if you've got a men's group or a great gathering, you'll consider him. And thanks for joining me. If you need some help, it's 1-800-NEW-LIFE. I really want to give you some help, and we'll see you next time.